Some mornings the house is so quiet, it feels like I've wandered into someone else's life. I never quite know what to do with it. Every model I have for how a person is comes with a built-in organizing structure. The coffee shop, Central Perk, the couch, even Buffy had the library, had the Scooby Gang assembled around a purpose, had crucially a Hellmouth providing consistent direction. I keep thinking about what Buffy Summers is actually doing on a Tuesday morning in 2026, my age, when there are thousands of slayers and none of them need her specifically. A slayer without a Hellmouth isn't retired. She's just a woman in a house who used to know exactly what she was for. The window is cracked just enough for a breeze to move through the room, carrying the faint jingle of the wind chimes outside. Sunlight pools on the rug, warming the soles of my feet. It's an odd sensation to be safe, finally, and yet so unmoored I can hear my own pulse. A steady, unfamiliar beat, slower than panic, quieter than fear. A nervous system still learning it doesn't need to brace. I stand there with tea that's gone cold. I forget to drink it half the time, staring out at the same suburban street I've watched for years, and I wonder if this is what other people feel like all the time. I mean that as a genuine question. I've spent so long trying to decode what normal looks like from the outside that I genuinely do not know whether this particular sensation, spacious, unstructured, slightly untethered, is what everyone means when they say at rest, or whether it's just what dysregulation feels like when nothing is actively on fire. This loose, airy spaciousness, this quiet state of being, possibly both. Ginger, our pit mix, sighs dramatically from her bed under the window, as if she too is waiting for instructions on how we're supposed to be today. She has the look of a dog who has done a lot of therapy and is concerned about my progress. For most of my life, quiet meant danger. Quiet meant shutdown, it meant shame, or the crash after adrenaline, or the beginning of a collapse. Quiet meant someone was about to ask why I was so sensitive or so weird, as if my reaction were the malfunction and not the thing that caused it. Quiet meant the old classic, whispered at high volume in my childhood home, "I'll give you something to cry about." And now, at 44, quiet is open. Still unsettling, but open. It feels less like relief than an unfamiliar condition I haven't learned to inhabit yet. A kind of unstructured possibility I never had the luxury to practice. My husband Ray is at work. The dog is snoring. And here I am in this house we somehow own, a sentence that feels like a fantasy when I say it out loud. Trying to understand what a life looks like when it isn't built on survival, masking, people-pleasing, and the relentless performance of competence. I should feel triumphant. I survived the collapse of the persona that kept me employable, work moon, that hyper-competent shell I built because the world only respected me when I acted like a machine. But what I see now, with more clarity and gentleness than I have ever known, is that I've lived most of my life split among versions of myself. Work moon, the one who could win any argument by out-reasoning, out-explaining, out-enduring everyone else. Wife moon, the soft, anxious one who felt too big and too unfinished to deserve ease. Family moon, the quiet one who withheld her pain because it was never received with care. Friend moon, sometimes a cheerleader, sometimes a chameleon, sometimes a ghost, mostly the psychologist. For a long time, I thought these parts were contradictions. Over time, they revealed themselves as adaptations shaped by context and necessity, rather than some personal inconsistency. Different masts for different landscapes. A whole internal architecture built to protect an unknowingly autistic girl in a world that demanded a shape she didn't come in. Beneath those masks is the internal atlas I didn't know I was building. Shame, neurodivergence, and values. The things looking back seem to guide every story I have. The shame that made me small, the traits that made me misunderstood, and the values: connection, calm, belonging, integrity, creativity. Those carried me even when I didn't know how to name them. For years, I kept those memories stacked on the highest shelf. I knew if I opened them, I'd have to look directly at myself, not the curated, competent version, but the real one, the one who lived through misdiagnosis, burnouts, plural, and a world that mistook masking for maturity. But lately, in this quiet house with the warm rug and the morning breeze, I feel steady enough to look. And once you begin looking, the memories don't stay in their boxes. They unfurl and braid themselves into coherence. I survived the jobs that wouldn't hold, the apartments lost, the cities tried and abandoned, the meltdowns and shutdowns, the burnout, the days where washing my hair meant a basin on the floor intended for bedridden people, outsourcing my hands to my husband's as he fumbled through the length of it, creating so many tangles, having to acknowledge that this is my toolkit now at 44. The shame spirals that made me hide from my own life in front of a TV. The slow realization that I was autistic in a world that demanded a different shape. I survived all of it. At 42, an artery tore, spontaneous coronary artery dissection, which is exactly as dramatic as it sounds and which stress almost certainly helped along. My body's least subtle hint to date. I noted it, filed it, and went back to work for another year, which tells you everything you need to know about how deep the pattern ran. It took a layoff to finish what the dissection started, and I'm still not sure whether to call that surviving or being saved. And yet, here I am, standing in my living room with cold tea, unsure how to inhabit stillness without feeling like I'm doing something wrong. Some mornings I imagine my time in Valencia, Spain, the sun-warmed stones, the breeze off the Mediterranean, and the feeling of pressure loosening its grip. I imagine walking through open-air markets with Ray, the smell of something frying nearby, a particular quality of light I associate with the idea of being unhurried, wishing for that long, slow exhale I've been holding since I was a child, singing to chickens on a 240-acre hillside. Though, I've noticed I do this, curate the memory until it's more feeling than fact. I don't know if I was actually relaxed in Valencia or if I was running a very convincing simulation of a person who was. That distinction matters to me, even now. Some mornings I feel the fear creep in, losing jobs and health insurance, being irrelevant in technology, realizing the woman who once powered through 60-hour work weeks might be gone for good. I don't know yet what will replace her. Maybe that's a blessing, but it still scares me. So I sip my gingery tea, letting the spice settle slowly into places my body still protects, and I understand something I've known for years, but never had the stability to say with my whole chest. I am here, alive, exhausted, and for the first time open. Looking back, before the girl, there was a song, Harvest Moon by Neil Young, the song my parents chose when I was conceived, deliberately, as if music could be written into a person before she has ears to hear it. My mother wanted to name me Moon. She didn't get to. This memoir uses it instead, which is either a reclamation or a belated arrival, depending on how you count. A girl in Central California who sang to chickens because they were the only ones who didn't need her to be different. A young woman who built a whole architecture of competence over a self she couldn't yet name. A body that absorbed more than it should have been asked to hold. A person who kept waiting for a life that fit. Who kept not quite finding it, who kept going anyway. Not out of resilience, I resist that word, but out of sheer, stubborn refusal to disappear. So, here is where it started. Please tell me you were recording that whole time.